So as I'm filming this, the upcoming weekend is the Easter weekend, and so this seems to have been the weekend that the UFC chose as a good opportunity to take a little bit of a break, which I would say is fair enough. I mean, holding these events every single week has got to be an absolutely just overwhelming task for an organization like that, and everybody's due for a break. So basically what that means is that I don't really have any more fights to talk about this upcoming weekend. So we'll take this as an opportunity to reel things back a little bit and talk about some of the topics that there just wasn't time to talk about in some of these previous weeks. And so the first one that I want to talk about is actually revisiting one that I had previously talked about, and of course that is the Petr Yan Aljemain Sterling situation. Now, I talked about this previously, and my take on the whole thing was pretty much this: is that Petr Yan is a fucking stupid idiot. And I thought that was all of it. But really, I guess what I didn't really understand is just how much of a fucking stupid idiot Petr Yan is. Because in the sense that I've actually paid a little bit of attention to his Twitter profile, and God, this is a guy who just doesn't seem to understand exactly how badly he's screwed up. He keeps coming at Aljemain Sterling over and over again, and basically he's questioning his manhood. He doesn't like the way that Aljemain Sterling took the title off of him. Well, Peter, whose fault is that? And quite frankly, what Petr Yan really needs to be doing right now is thanking his lucky stars that he's actually going to get a rematch. And it does very much seem like he is going to get that rematch. I honestly would have thought that the next person in line for a chance at the Bantamweight Championship of the world should be Corey Sandhagen. He's been the best fighter in that division for the last year. Now, in my opinion, he's been better than either of these two champions. But they haven't booked him for a championship match. They just booked him to fight TJ Dillashaw, who's of course coming off of a 2-year suspension. So obviously Corey Sandhagen is not considered to be the #1 contender to this championship. It looks like Petr Yan is probably going to get a rematch. There are a lot of people out there right now saying, oh, we need to go back and do this Petr Yan Aljemain Sterling fight again. And I have to be honest with you, I don't really understand that reasoning. I don't understand that reasoning any further beyond the detail that there's a new champion and he didn't really win the championship by beating the former champion. So just based on that alone, I suppose I would say that yes, it does seem like perhaps there is some kind of an issue there, but we do have to take a closer look at exactly how it was that Petr Yan lost the championship, and we have to appreciate that for everything that it is. And it is as simple as this. Petr Yan was disqualified. Petr Yan walked into that fight. He was obligated to know what the rules were. All of his cornermen, you can't just corner a fighter in the UFC, you have to be licensed to do it. They were all licensed cornermen, so they were all obligated to know the rules. Everybody involved in that situation was obligated to know the rules, and somehow they managed to throw that illegal knee strike to the head of a grounded fighter. There needs to be some very deep repercussions for that. I honestly think that what a lot of people who are on Petr Yan's side of this, and I don't understand how anybody could actually be on Petr Yan's side of this, but I think that the one thing that people haven't really appreciated is that MMA, mixed martial arts, is not just a sport where anybody gets to play just because they want to. You have to go through the sanctioning process. You have to be a licensed fighter. And so what that basically means is that there are conditions for your license to fight. They don't just give these things out to anybody who wants one. One of the conditions of that license is that you have to know the rules and that you have to follow the referee's instructions. And so right there, Petr Yan, he had an obligation to know that that was an illegal knee strike. When the referee told him not to throw that knee strike, he had an obligation to follow the referee's instructions. This is not a complicated situation. The simple fact of the matter is that Petr Yan was disqualified. Okay? He was disqualified. He was deemed no longer qualified to fight. And I don't think that it's all unreasonable to say at this juncture that Petr Yan should be deemed not qualified for another fight. should definitely be deemed not qualified for another championship fight. As a matter of fact, I think that Petr Yan should be sent away for a little while. He should be sent away to someplace, basically to re-qualify himself as a fighter. Quite frankly, I think that any athletic commission who was approached to sanction a fight between Petr Yan and Aljemain Sterling, they should refuse to sanction that. They should refuse to license the fighter until such a time as they are satisfied that he is qualified to fight, that he knows the rules, that he is prepared to follow the instructions of the referee in the octagon. That should be a no-go for the sanctioning bodies who, quite frankly, are responsible to protect the athlete. So the athletics commissions, they should not be entertaining this fight. And to be frank with you, the UFC itself should not even be entertaining the possibility of a Petr Yan Aljemain Sterling rematch at this particular juncture. You know, I am old enough as a fan to remember a time when the UFC's reputation was as a sport where guys would go and just punch each other in the groin for 20 minutes straight. You know, those were not good times for this sport. Those were times when this sport was having difficulty, you know, just being allowed to go forward in a lot of U.S. states. It was banned in a lot of places. You know, U.S. Senator John McCain actually called the sport, you know, human cockfighting. And when you look at some of the places where this sport has been over the years, there have been some dark times where that has not been terribly far removed from the truth. So make no mistake about it. You know, the sight of Petr Yan holding Aljemain Sterling's head in his hands while Aljemain Sterling is on his knee, and then throwing that illegal knee strike, you know, that is a flashback to the gutter days of this sport. And they need to never come back. And basically what that means is that Petr Yan needs to be made an example out of. And he very much does. That might sound extreme, but he needs to be made an example out of. Because when a champion in this sport goes into the octagon to have a fight, the spotlight of the sporting world is on them and it is on him. And in that moment, he is an example of everything that this sport is supposed to be. And if the way that he conducts himself is basically something that will indicate to the outside world that no, this is in fact not a sport that is governed by rules, well, that needs to be taken very seriously. Probably more seriously when a champion does it than with any other fighter. And if that doesn't seem terribly fair to you, then you need to remember that that is everything that this fighter signed up for. You know, they signed up to be the most visible fighter, you know, to get the big paychecks. They signed up to have the most responsibility for the sport. And when they do something like this, the penalty needs to reflect that. So quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, Petr Yan, he should be sent right back to the prelims. They should send him back to the early prelims. And quite frankly, I mean, if Petr Yan decides he doesn't like that, I mean, what's he going to do? What's he going to go walk? That guy's a marginal star. He's like a third-tier talent in this sport. He's never headlined a pay-per-view. He's never headlined a show on ESPN. Whenever he's had a title fight, it has always been the third down from the top of the card. Petr Yan walking away from this organization would not be a devastating blow. But Petr Yan being allowed to think that he's going to get away with what he did in that fight with Aljemain Sterling, that would be a devastating blow to this sport.